All right, Whyno, first day of pads. What did you see out here?
It was intense. I mean, it was what you'd expect out of not full pads. They're not. This is not the 1990s where guys are crushing each other. But some of the O-line, D-line drills are great. Some of the one-on-one kind of DBs and receiver drills, you can see a little bit of the physicality. Terry McLaurin and guys like that actually pushing off and doing things like a game. And Sam Cosmi just told us, he's like, I think this will prepare us better for games because of the intensity. You could tell. I mean, they're fans here. There's a little bit more of a juice and energy to this camp in general, and especially a day like this.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to hear Cosmi specifically say, not just today, but in general, like there's a way higher intensity level. I haven't been to camp as much in the Rivera era. I can only compare it to when I was on the beat covering Gruden. But from what you've seen, Gruden to first 3 years of Rivera to now, like you put them on a scale of 1 to 10, where are those three levels?
Yeah, I would say Gruden would have been at a 4. Rivera's initial years are a 6, and this is at an 8. I think there's certainly something. I don't know if it's just the honeymoon period of new ownership and fans being here, but there is like when you have fans cheering and you have just a general energy in the area and the stands set up. Like the stands weren't here before. Like this is a whole different feels like. And Sam Cosmi said this last week. It feels like an NFL training camp, and that's where. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how those open practices with the Ravens go in a couple of weeks of kind of where that intensity ramps up and whether they can match a contending team's kind of level of play in the middle of August.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's interesting to kind of pair with that, though, is there is a togetherness that seems to be around this team. And Ron talked about it yesterday, where he's like, the offensive guys are helping the defensive guys. We're 1 day into pads and 5-6 days into training camp. So eventually there's probably going to be a fight because it's training camp and that's what happens. But like, if you ask me right now, like, could they get through training camp without that? I would probably tell you, yeah, it's more possible than any other year I can remember. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, and Ron last year talked about a lot about this team's maturity or lack thereof with maturity. I've got a lot of young players and a young team, and so the heat ramps up and it's 100 degrees and you're going to have guys going at each other. Not that there's not a little bit of healthy kind of animosity when the pads are on and it's hot and those sort of things, but there's more of a level-headedness, I think, now, and just the idea of a lot of these guys have been around before. You're adding some rookies in, but you're adding veterans in who know what they're doing. Andrew Wiley, Nick Gates, guys who, Cody Barton, who have been around the block before, and there is a level of maturity there that we haven't seen in years past, where if it wouldn't surprise me if you get through an entire training camp without a fight, but if you have one or two breakout, like scuffles, you just don't want guys throwing punches. And I think Ron Rivera has been frustrated about that before, of kind of calming his guys down. And you have Eric Bieniemy who's juicing everybody up and he's yelling and all of that. If they're able to kind of maintain that sort of level of being able to play against each other but with each other, that's what a team is all about. And I think that speaks to this team becoming a little older, a little wiser under Ron Rivera in a fourth year.
Post-practice Whyno here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, of course, live on the free Odyssey app and streaming on YouTube, youtube.com/@the-team980. The pads coming on also meant we got our first real look at the run game. I'm not gonna lead the witness here, but what did you make of that first run period where they really got after it?
Yeah, I mean, there are weapons on this offense. There are guys who can run the ball on this offense, and what is going to be fascinating to me is how Eric Bieniemy decides to use Brian Robinson versus Jonathan Williams and Antonio Gibson. I'm going to throw Jonathan Williams in there too because they know they like him as a short yardage sort of back and those kind of situations. And in an offense like this, we saw it with Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid in Kansas City. You can mix and match running backs and get a little bit of shifting around and that sort of thing. Antonio Gibson, I don't want to say he's redundant in this offense, but I think him being a punt kick returner sort of thing will be important for him to kind of have a spot and a niche on this team because it sure looks to me like Brian Robinson is the guy and the new interior offensive line it's way better, right? This is not Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner and having kind of mixed and match centers and Nick Martin, all those things. This is you bring in Nick Gates, you shift Cosmi and Sadiq Charles, who were in college tackles, inside, and this is a remade offensive line that can run the ball. And how much you use the tight ends in sort of a blocking role or how, obviously there's no Travis Kelce here, right? But to have that kind of look to the offense, there's a balance that could exist that helps Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett out a lot.
I agree with all of that. today was not great for that first unit, though. And I think that is just a reminder of like how ridiculously good Allen, Payne, like their yards per carry.
Even the second line defense. I mean, even the second. The
threes saved the yards per carry average today.
Right, and that's like the defensive line, the depth on this team on defensive line is something, but I think it's hard to judge a running game based on the few pads these guys are wearing at this point.
Right, yeah, 9 on 7 is not, I think it's weird. I think they did 9 on 8, by the way. They had the front 7 and they had a safety in the background.
And then some of those, they were doing a lot of drills at the same time simultaneously, where it's 1-on-1s here and 7-on-7s there, and so I really like to see those offensive line, defensive line drills of kind of the pass rush, and a guy like Mason Brooks, the undrafted out of Ole Miss, looked really good, and just kind of seeing a little bit of that, and we'll know better in 2 or 3 weeks how the running game's going to look.
Right, and the thing, we talked about this on the podcast the other day, like, you're not getting any, like, play calling benefits right now. Right. It's like, you do a run period, the defense knows it's run, and with John Allen, Deron Payne, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat, and Big Phil in there, like, you'd kind of expect them to be awesome at that point, and they were today. So, like, the way I have been trying to evaluate practice is you look at a drill and you go, who should win the drill? Based off the setup of the drill. Does that side of the ball win the drill? And I feel like overall today, the right side won the drill most often.
Yeah, and Ron Rivera was mentioning this, and you discussed this, that you want to practice hard. You want the offense to be able to get the reps against the Deron Paynes, the Jonathan Allens, the Fedarian Mathises, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and be able to test, because honestly, this should be one of the best defensive lines in football, at least, and they could play 5 across easily with Fedarian Mathis in there as an extra lineman. But yes, this was not a practice where it was shocking a whole lot of times of kind of who was winning each drill.
Yeah, with, of course, Steve Whyno, the AP, here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. So all right, let me just ask you bluntly, like plainly, what did you make of Sam's day?
He was better today than he has been in recent days, and he's had some ups and downs. We've seen some of the long balls he's thrown to Terry McLaurin, and some of the good things he's done, and some of the mistakes that he's made, and got picked off by Emmanuel Forbes, got picked off by Cam Curl in recent days. I think he needed a day like today to kind of settle things in. Some throws that were off here and there, and some nice throws and some of the one-on-ones and that sort of thing, but it's a very slow learning curve, I think, for a guy like Sam Howell. Even though he started a game last year, he's gotten the spring to be the number one quarterback. He doesn't really have a threat in Jacoby Brissett. Like, you could throw Brissett in there, but he is getting every chance and every snap to learn along the way. So if he's still making the mistakes he's made over the weekend or last week, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, and it's the first week of the season, and all of a sudden those mistakes are repeating themselves, I think it was a reasonable day for a young quarterback.
I agree with you. I thought he was fairly good today. There's a couple throws you're like, oh, right. When it's right with him, like, that's really good. Brissett, I didn't feel like had a great day today.
No, he didn't. And the thing about Sam Howell, and I mentioned this to one of our colleagues earlier, he gets the ball out real quick. More so than Carson Wentz, he doesn't overthink it. And maybe that's just a matter of he's learning the offense and he knows where his kind of first read is in the offense. Maybe a little bit of a rougher day from Jacoby Brissett, but from the sample size of a week so far, Jacoby Brissett's a professional quarterback. He's fine. He is what he is. You're not going to probably, unless Sam Howell's hurt, you're not starting Jacoby Brissett week 1. There's no juice behind that. You got the first game of a new era and all these things. Sam Howell is your higher risk, lower, like high reward, high risk sort of player that you don't know what he's going to turn out to be. Jacoby Brissett is one of those veterans who he's gearing himself up to play at some point. He doesn't need to be perfect on day 4, 5, 6 of camp. So he can mess around with some things. He's also learning a new offense with Eric Bieniemy and trying to figure those things out. So I almost give him a little bit more leeway to kind of mess around with things and try to figure out what might work than a guy like Sam Howell, who has to figure out how to play in the NFL.
Right. This was the first day, though. We've talked about a lot of positive stuff. This did seem to be the first day where there were a lot of mental mistakes. The huddle stuff with Bieniemy, especially in goal line, like he was on them. Guys are lining up wrong. And like there was one play where they ran it 3-4 times because Terry didn't seem to know exactly what to do on the motion. And like that was more coaching and fine tuning than it was like what the hell is going on. But there was a lot of like what the hell moments today. And that was, as far as I know, the first time that's happened all camp.
It has. And Eric Bieniemy has been very vocal throughout camp of kind of getting guys in line and those sort of things. But he's trying to correct along the way. And yeah, you don't want to have those kind of mental mistakes, but you'd rather have it now than week 1 against the Cardinals. You'd rather be able to teach that play now and run it 3 or 4 times now. The weather was gorgeous today. I mean, in the low 70s, mid 70s. So
I got to come to camp more. I've missed all the just absolutely putrid days.
Yeah,
So I apologize for the weekend when I wasn't here and you guys were dying.
nothing you can do about that. But everybody was.
That's what
sweating.
you think.
Everybody, yeah, you can control that. Keep coming out here. But like everybody was sweating through their shirts last week. Now you have a nice day. You can kind of take your time and fix through things. It is still, I don't want to say a young team, but it's still a team trying to figure out an offense. And from the offensive line back to Sam Howell to Terry McLaurin, it's a whole new system. You had the OTAs and minicamp and all that, but it's now kind of putting it into practice and kind of learning all these things along the way. There's a lot to input. I think people forget how much football players have to learn just about a playbook and a system and all of these things and how much kind of has to go into that. So a few mental mistakes now, not the end of the world. But yeah, you could tell Bieniemy and even Randy Jordan, some of the other coaches were on guys today about don't mess this up, don't do this wrong another time.
Yeah, there was one point where Bieniemy, he had yelled at both running backs. There's one point where he said, my 2 top dogs are screwing up. That's a paraphrase. And then at one point, he looked at Randy Jordan and was like, Coach Randy, we got to get him out faster, I think was the phrase he used. I don't remember exactly what he was referring to there, but I think it was on a route. We got to get out into the route faster. So Bieniemy really on the running backs today. Obviously, he's a former running back, cares a lot about every detail, but that one's personal for him. Anything else from practice today that we should talk about?
No, I mean, this is a team that's still kind of gelling along the way. What I liked is the safeties on this team right now. You look at a practice like today, and you're like, Cam Curl and Derek Forrest are the reason why Bobby McCain was kind of made redundant. And these guys are nice young players. The intensity was there, and we talked about this earlier. It's fun when the fans are out here. There's another great crowd today, yeah. And there really is. I know it's a cliche. The players feed off a crowd. I think there's an energy about fans being there, and just like it probably will be at FedEx in September when it might be full for the first time in a long time of actually Washington football fans, that there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, Steve Whyno, read his work in the AP. You'll certainly hear him here on the show. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Trey.
Thanks for watching this clip of our 2023 Washington Commanders training camp coverage. For more, check out the radio show live daily from 4 to 7 p.m. on the Team 980. We also stream live on the free Odyssey app, or you can watch the show here on YouTube at the Team 980. Subscribe right here for all our on-demand content. Click the button. Go now. Subscribe. And come on, while you're at it, let's be honest. If you made it this far, you probably liked what you saw. So go ahead and hit that like button too before another video starts. It's the polite thing to do.